think everybody is now entering into the room. We were just chatting offline beforehand, and it's like waiting for your party to see who's going to turn up. So firstly, thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and welcome. Just as by way of introduction, I'm Jennifer Sproul. I'm the Chief Exec of the Institute of Internal Communication. So it's my job this evening to welcome you all. Thank you for giving up your time, and also to say I hope you'll enjoy this. It's a great panel of students and alumni that have come together with our teaching team to really talk you through what the Masters has taught them, how they've applied it, how it works in value. So we really hope you get some great insights, and also an opportunity later on to have some conversation with all of our alumni and teaching team as well. So welcome, thank you, and I'm going to hand over to Liz Cochrane, who is the course director and going to be the master of ceremonies of tonight's proceedings. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Jen. And yes, that is the plan, though rather scarily, my screen has frozen a couple of times while we were just waiting to go on. So should I suddenly freeze like that, then my colleagues Jenny and Donma will promptly take over. And yeah, the plan this evening is to chat to our three alumni who have joined us. Rebecca, Becky Leonard, Kate Shaw and Juliet Stevens. They'll introduce themselves in a minute. And we thought what we'd do is start with a kind of a general discussion, and then we'll talk a little bit about the difference that it's made, that doing the masters, talk a bit about the management reports. The management reports that each of them did last year, and sort of other stuff that we covered, and then we'll open up for just a more general conversation. So we thought the way that we'd do it is that while we're doing this initial sort of panel chat, then if you've got questions that you'd like to ask or comments you'd like to make, please do so straight away. But if you do that via the chat function, please, which, as I am sure you know, is a button on the bottom ribbon of the screen. And Jenny is poised, waiting to pick up your comments and questions, and will feed those in at an appropriate moment in the proceedings. So please ask straight away, because otherwise the chances are you'll forget. And then once we've had our general chat, what we'll do is to invite everyone just to all pile in, videos on, we can all see each other, and we can just, you know, sort of answer any questions that we've got generally. And I'll be leading proceedings, as Jen Sproul has said, but Jenny and Donma will not be slow in coming forward when they have comments, etc., to add to the proceedings, I am sure. The other thing I'd say just before we start is for your additional viewing pleasure, unless you're on the panel, if you turn your videos off, please. And we suggest as well that if you go, you can either watch in speaker view, which you'll find on the top right of your screen, or if you go into video settings and then scroll down into the meetings list and click on hide non-video participants. That's probably my favourite Zoom function, because it means that you then in gallery view just get to see the people who've got their cameras on, so you can see us in full Technicolor glory and see the fact that I am in desperate need of seeing a hairdresser at the moment. But
all of us.
Anyway, with no further ado, I think what I'm going to do is first get each member of the panel to introduce yourselves, please. You're starting with the our alumni and sort of the organisation you're from and the role you do. and then we will kick off with the discussion. So can I start with you, Becky?
Yes, sure. So yeah, I'm Becky Leonard. I'm the Insight and Content Manager at Sequel Group, which is a employee experience agency. And what I do, it's kind of what it says on the tin. I'm part of our Insight team, which means I work across audits and measurement and strategy. And then I also specialise in strategic content. And yeah, as well as being an alumni of the Masters, I also actually did the foundation and advanced diplomas with the IoIC as well.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Becky. And Kate.
Yeah, hi everybody. Kate Shaw from Nationwide Building Society. Been there 10 years now, can't quite believe it. And I am the Senior Comms Manager for Change Communication. So anything involving people change, process change, policy change, whatever. But I'm not going to lie, the last 5 months have largely been focused on coronavirus.
What a surprise.
I know.
You must be a one-off there, really, I think. Excellent. And last but not least, Juliet.
Hi everyone, I'm Juliet Stevens. I am Head of Marketing and Communication at the Freight Forwarding Division of DHL. So we do all things air and ocean freight related. Been with the company about 5 years. I started off as internal comms primarily, and I've picked up marketing over the last couple of years as well. I would say 80 to 90% of my focus is internal comms with another sort of 20% marketing. But again, as with everyone else, pretty much full-time corona on an internal basis at the moment.
Excellent, thank you. And to introduce the rest of the team, Donna, you first.
Hi everyone, my name is Domna Lazadou, and I run the final module on the MA. My background is in communication, and I specialize particularly on culture and engagement. But the module I ran is all about research and putting what you learn into practice. So the team in a minute will tell you all about their final management project. And this is what you do at the end of the research module. The research module covers effectively how you go about planning, designing, and conducting your own management communication research in your organizational context. It's very challenging, but hopefully, as you will hear, it can also be quite fun and quite valuable. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Donna. And Jenny.
Hi everyone. Look forward to seeing your faces soon. I'm Jenny Davenport. I do, as well as doing the Masters, I do a little bit of internal comms and senior management strategy consulting. So I'm in charge of the second and third modules, which cover a massive amount of territory, particularly the second one looking at change and communication strategy. And the third one looking particularly about influence, everything to do with influence, but also looking forward to what are the challenges facing organizations, and particularly related to internal comms into the future.
Brilliant.
So that's a very quick intro from me. So I'm happy to take questions. I don't want to say too much that isn't relevant.
And I'm Liz, as you know, and I'm the course director, and I also lead on module 1 of the Masters, and that's really around making sure that people have really got a foundation in terms of getting an in-depth understanding around the culture of organisations, looking at issues like leadership, power, things like that. And it also looks in depth at the process of sense making, which underpins everything we do, really, and is far more complex than it first appears. But anyway, enough of us. We're going to kick off now by what you're interested in, which is, well, why did these three people actually decide to sort of take a year of their lives to be combining working full-time and doing a Masters? And we thought a good way of kicking off that kind of discussion would be to talk about, well, what difference has the Masters made to people now that they've actually got to the other end of it? Because all three of you actually graduated or you finished the programme at the end of September last year, so about 9 months ago. And so plenty of opportunity to have been putting it into practice since then in all sorts of different contexts. And if I'll kick off with Becky, but then we're just going to try and make this a fairly free-flowing conversation generally. Becky, tell us about why, what difference it's made to you so far.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like you said, we finished 9 months ago, but actually I think we started a year previously to that, and you start applying the learning basically from the get-go. I think right from the start of it, from that first module, it just really makes you think about the science of communication. So rather than operating off what you feel is a gut feeling, you know that what you're doing is based in methods that have got come from proper research and proper thinking. So for example, the work that we did that Jenny mentioned about persuading people and influencing and looking at behavioral insight, I went into that initially thinking, oh, this is going to be so useful in terms of being an influential advisor, but actually I've obviously used it in that way, but also it's been so useful for planning communication campaigns and strategies, because it's all about how to persuade your audience and keep them on side. And it's almost become a kind of checklist of psychology or behavior that I go down when I'm putting a campaign together. And that's straight theory that I've taken from the masters and been able to use, weekly in my job.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I saw you were nodding there, Kate, in support of that as well. Is that something that you've been finding as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you talk about the science of communication, and I think it's just given me so much credibility when I'm making my recommendations to senior leaders across the organisation, that I'm basing it on the science of what we do, not just I've made the suggestion because it's what I want to do. It's actually based in, it's got foundations and it's given it real strength. And I think that's been really helpful. It has empowered me to have more challenging conversations. So when senior leaders when we all experience this, they know what they want, they'll just demand what they want. It actually has given me much more confidence in saying, I don't think that's the right thing to do. And you win some of those battles and you lose some of those battles, but it has definitely helped me shape my arguments in a different way. Even some of the research where you work through your thinking and you work through how you have understood something and then present back recommendations as part of the masters. That is a skill set that just keeps giving, because you can show your thinking. And I work for a building society, they're financial, they're accountants, they're not hearts and minds type people. So being able to translate it into insights and stuff like that has been really helpful, really powerful.
Fantastic. Yeah. So Jenny, it sounds like all your good work on influencing is bearing fruit then.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And Juliet, I saw a distinct nod in your direction, or from your direction on that as well. Anything that you'd add on that whole kind of influencing and clout thing, I guess, really, isn't it? Because that's always seems to be a strong theme whenever I'm talking to any of our alumni, really. So,
from my perspective, I think echoing what Rebecca and Kate have both said, it's given me more confidence as well, and that fits in with having clout. I feel that now I can back up what I have always known and felt, but the senior managers in particular sort of respect it more because they know that I've been through the masters. I sort of chatted with them what we've been learning and sharing my learnings with them as well, and it's been absolutely invaluable. I work in a standalone role, even though I've got quite a wide remit, and I find it challenging not having other communicators or at least career communicators to sort of back me up. And I feel that the Masters has given that. So the Masters is sort of sitting alongside me sort of at work really, and it's been really invaluable. I also have the senior management team that I report into is a team of, it's 9 men and 1 female as well, who have worked in the organisation. I think the average length of service for the SMT is probably about 15 to 20 years in their current roles, and so to have sort of a woman, quite a fairly young woman, coming in and sort of basically saying how things should change can be challenging, but I feel that the Masters has given me an extra sort of air of respect, and you know, sort of, as I say, backing up ultimately what I know, and it's been absolutely invaluable. So anyone in a similar position, I would say that yeah, it's worth the time and the investment, most definitely.
Excellent. And so you've said, you know, you've been able to back stuff up, and you've been able to make changes. So give us an example of a change that you've influenced, a change that that you've been able to make.
Certainly during the COVID situation, our senior management team, certainly a chief executive, have always been quite shy when it comes to communicating, and it's almost sort of turned around during the COVID situation, and I feel that they've really worked with me to communicate. We now have sort of monthly town halls for all staff, which is unprecedented. I used to manage a couple a year. And I'm being able to influence in terms of the content and the messaging as well. We've just run a pulse survey in terms of how people consider the communication and how well connected they feel at this time. And the results compared to previous EOSs, considering it's just a pulse survey, have actually sort of blown out of the water. And I think that's part of being able to sort of get in and to influence and to encourage the direction of the communication and the quantity and quality and sort of the key messages. And you know, I think it's really had a good impact on all sort of 1,000 or so people that I directly work with as well. And that's not exaggerating. That's just a very real example. So yeah, it's been fantastic, and it couldn't be amazing. Times.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess one of the things that struck me when you were all just talking was you sort of referred to kind of the science of communication. And I think I'd be interested in just unpacking that a bit more. And, you know, so in terms of the science of communication, sort of what are you talking about there? What were some of the specific things that had stood out for you and that you have used in practice?
So I can answer that one. I think I mean, an actual science is the neuroscience piece that we cover during the Masters. I think more broadly, some of the theory and some of the learning that we do, where someone has actually researched something, they've gathered the evidence, they've made the recommendations, is something that has been really helpful. But neuroscience in particular, I've used quite a lot to help leaders understand how people might react to change. So, you know, how our brains react to something, how it interprets things, why people might respond to change in certain ways in terms of, you know, COVID is a classic example of being as a threat. So, and risk of life, risk of whatever it might be, and using that to be able to interpret to the leadership community that you will see different reactions to change, different reactions to bad news or good news, whatever it might be, and also getting them to understand that those reactions are all okay. And actually it's about being prepared for the reactions, not trying to stop them. And reminding them, it's enabled me to remind them that we're dealing with people. And it sounds really obvious. But sometimes when it's a change program, when they're talking about 18,000 staff, and you're like, no, they're actually people. They've got families. They've got this, that, and the other. And you're talking about, and you don't know their circumstances and everything. So that neuroscience of how brains work and might react to different things has been really, really valuable. And I've just got a new book. I've got Hillary's book, Neuroscience for Change Programs, Organizational Change, and I'm about to read that. So yeah, that sparked, I guess, an ongoing interest for me, and one that I would quite like to learn a bit more about.
Fantastic.
That's really interesting. Can I interrupt with a live question? Is that okay, Liz? Is that going to mess up the...
No,
So,
not at
so we've
all.
had a couple of people asking, it'd be really useful to hear from the former students, how much, what the time commitment is like. How much time does it take every week, or how do you fit it in around full-time work?
Right.
Kate, I'm going to go back. Yeah, let's go back to you again, because I know when we were chatting earlier, you were saying there was an unexpected benefit from the from having done it.
The unexpected benefit that I've taken away is I've learned a lot about my time management skills and how to improve them, and actually what works for me. I wouldn't say there's actually a fixed answer to that in terms of time commitment, because I think what we all learn is you only know what you can put into something like this. During the first assignment, I learned very quickly that I cannot do anything in the evening. I was getting up, it might be different now, but I was getting up at 5:45 to go to work by 7:30. I would get home 6:30, 7 o'clock. There was no point in trying to do anything in the evening. So very early on at the beginning of the year, I said, I'm going to give up my weekends. And I'm going to use all day Saturday, all day Sunday to do all my assignments, all my reading, all my learning, with a couple of study days, because Nationwide does provide you with study leave if you want to take it. And that was just the decision that I made. You obviously take the days out to go to the actual learning days. Again, I'm assuming that would be virtually, maybe, or whatever going forward. But you know, those are the commitments that I make, and it was literally, I guess, you get out what you put in. And I definitely felt on some of my assignments where I was able to just commit slightly more weekends or slightly more time, you can see the impact on what was delivered at the end. And I will say that every single assignment coincided with a massive delivery at work, and it was almost 2 days later of every single one, there would be my financial results or the closure of our pension scheme or whatever it might be. So you don't know those things at the beginning of the year. So I think the personal commitment you make to the time is really important.
Yeah, I think I would add to that. So I kind of worked in the opposite way, in that I used to use kind of evenings to do it. So I kind of I would try and, as much as I could, would kind of add, maybe I'd stay at work an hour later if I could, or maybe use a lunchtime, and kind of did it little and often, just basically because I couldn't give up my weekends. So I did it the other way around. The thing I thought was really useful is if you've got any kind of commute, or there's just even little bits in the day, you'll actually find that you can get so much reading done in kind of small instances. So I have about a 40-minute tube journey to work and then a 40-minute tube journey back, and I found that was just such useful time for reading, because reading can seem that, oh god, I need to sit down for hours and do this, but actually breaking it up into little chunks I found was really useful. But yeah, like Kate, I did, when it came to assignments and stuff, I did have to give over whole weekends and stuff to it, because it is a time commitment, but it is possible to kind of break it up into smaller chunks to fit around things,
and it is really worth it. Like that that's the thing. And I think in terms of time commitment, what we also got from Liz, Jenny and Domino was that if we were committed enough to submit drafts early, you guys were able to look at it as many times as we could send it to you, I think, within reason. And that was really helpful, and that does require, I guess, a bit of focus in yourself to say, right, I'm going to try and get a first draft in 3 weeks early, work on the feedback, and that gives you time. I will admit I don't have children, so I did find that I wasn't having to juggle things like that, but there were people in my little cohort who do have children, and again they would negotiate, I think, on child-free time or whatever it might be to make it happen. And they would identify the best way that they would learn and the best way that they could commit time, and it was quite personal for them, I think.
I think before Juliet answers, just to say from my point of view, I've seen people spend enormously different amounts of time. So some people have said, I've got lots of other things in my life. My children are more important, my whatever it is else they've got in their lives, but I'm going to do what I need to do to pass this. And that's fine too. And you will get people who will actually make a decision quite early on that they're not willing to give it that much time, and will do enough to pass. And that's you know, I think all the students who got tonight were all particularly sort of diligent
Keen.
who all did well,
Yeah.
but actually there's the option to be slightly less diligent if
Yeah, there is.
I don't know, Juliet,
Actually,
Juliet was another diligent one.
One of my favourite stories about that is that the one particular person who was actually in a year before these three, and I remember having a conversation with her right at the start, and she was thinking about it, and she was saying, oh, but I've got a full-time job, you know, senior role, and I've got 3 children under 3. No, sorry, 3 children under 5.
I know the story.
Yeah, and so she decided that she would, you know, she could do it, and we, you know, looked at it, and yeah, you know, it was feasible for her to do it. She said, but I only want to pass. So I am just going to do enough that I will pass. And then the first assignment, she got a distinction. And from then on, she just did so brilliantly. And she got a distinction, submitted every single assignment on time, and went through not only various crises at work, but chicken pox in the family as well. So she's my role model in terms of all of that. But yeah, you know, you don't need to there are a range of options. Juliet, I haven't asked you yet about time.
And sorry, Juliet, before you answer it, there's a sort of supplementary, which is, can you give an example of what an assignment might involve? So you might answer both of those together. And I'll come back to Daniel's question in a minute. Is Juliet frozen?
Oh,
she's frozen.
She's frozen. Right.
Okay,
She
perhaps
will
one of the others of you can
unfreeze.
say something about an assignment, give an example of what an assignment might involve. In terms of what I suppose that means.
Yeah, sure. So assignments in general start with, and I mean, we'll talk more about specifically about the management report, which might also help answer this. But in general, yeah, it would be starting off by reading a lot, reading selectively around whatever the subject areas that we're covering, and as you're reading, thinking about what that's going to mean for your organization. So when we were talking for one of the assignments, it was about analyzing the structure of an organization. So I work in an agency, so I used one of my clients, which is a publisher. So as you're reading, you're also starting to form in your head what issue, or for me, organization, you're going to look at. And then from there onwards, it's starting to kind of shape your argument, planning your structure, and then putting your essay together. And as Kate mentioned, as you're going through that, you're working with Liz and with Jenny and with Domna to put through drafts of your assignment to make sure that you're going along the right track. But it's also important to say that at the beginning of every module, we do go through each assignment in real detail to talk about what it is you need to do to pass. So you do have a lot of guidance and a lot of help.
And just to add to that, the way we structure the assignments is each time we're getting people to take theory that they will have covered in the workshop, but then obviously we'll build on that further as the others have said. But take that theory, but then apply it to their organisation or to a client organisation. So yeah, the first one gets you to look at the sort of structure and culture of the organisation, and what does that mean for internal communication? And then you're developing a strategy for the organisation, and then underpinning that with so why are we suggesting this and using theory to do that? And likewise, the third one, which is all around influence and choosing a particular stakeholder or group of stakeholders and thinking about the sort of strategies for influencing them, building on all sorts of the psychology of decision making and various other things. But it's always that theory into practice approach. So if you were asking from the perspective of what does an assignment involve in terms of content, then lots of reading and theory, but very much then it's the practical, what does this mean? And each time, one of the things we're asking everyone to do is not just discuss it, but come to a set of conclusions and then practical kind of strategic level recommendations as well. So it's very much constantly thinking about, what does this mean? How can we apply it? Which
can I ask a completely different question coming in, which is about how varied are the backgrounds of the participants likely to be? Question from Daniel.
Fair enough. Right. Well, backgrounds for you three to start with, and then Jenny and Donma, maybe you can expand a little bit on the range of backgrounds we've seen in the past. Very is the short answer, but in terms of a longer answer, Juliet, are you back? Oh, can you hear us?
No, she was for a bit.
Yeah,
she was for a bit, but now she's gone again.
Never mind. So, right. Okay. So, well, Kate, what's your background?
So my background, I mean, I've been at Nationwide 10 years, all internal comms. Prior to that, did internal comms for the BBC, and before that, Lloyd's TSB, and have purely done internal comms. I did a journalism degree. And so I think you see that with a lot of people heading into a communication role, don't you? Some sort of writing foundation type thing. I think, I don't know if you're still doing this, Liz, but with the people who didn't have a degree, you did some extra stuff right at the beginning.
That's right.
And I didn't actually have any academic writing experience when I joined, because my degree was an entirely practical journalism degree. And after 10, 15 years in internal comms, then teaching yourself to write academically is really hard.
Yeah. But there is an academic writing day that we do after the first workshop. And for people who haven't got a degree, then what we do is, as part of the kind of the joining process, as part of the acceptance process, we actually set a mini assignment for you to do. And what I do is I basically just use that as a way of coaching people. Because, sort of people can, I give them guidelines, and then people will have a go, and then I'll give them feedback, and we might we'll do it as many times as needed to really get on top of exactly what the expectations are. So not having a degree is not a barrier at all. In fact, very often it's the people who haven't got degrees, they do extremely well. Sorry, I spoke over you, Jenny.
No, I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that many of the people without degrees, and also to say that within the things they've done, we occasionally do a sort of exercise in one of the workshops, which is asking people, what sort of background they've had academically or in terms of the work disciplines they've had, and it's always incredible. So you get someone who's a research scientist, and someone who studied biology, and someone who studied. I mean, there's a huge range in terms of what they've done. I don't think it's any
actors. We've had actors.
Actors,
in the past. Certainly journalists.
Civil servants, a whole lot. So, a sort of question that's related to that in a way, which is a question about: do you have to have done the foundation and advanced diplomas to be accepted for the master's course? And the answer is you don't. No. I don't know if you want to say a word, Liz, about what you do need to have done, as it were, before being accepted. Yeah.
No, I mean, just to give a little bit of context in terms of the sort of the ladder of qualifications that the IoIC has, the foundation diploma is very much kind of around the craft skills that you acquire as a communicator. So a strong emphasis on writing plus other craft skills that you would be using, in the early parts of your career, and that, obviously are an important foundation. The advanced diploma is more as you move into a more sort of junior management role within internal comms, and where you might be managing specific channels, etc., campaign planning, all that sort of thing. And then the master's is very much for people who are interested in working at a strategic level. And that's absolutely where it's aimed at. And, you know, we always get a mix of people who are already very much working at a strategic level, and have a lot of experience of having done so, and other people who maybe aren't doing so yet, but know they're ready to. And so it's around getting that sort of underpinning knowledge and confidence to be able to operate at a strategic level. And Rebecca, you're nodding furiously at the moment, so I just want you to add something, you know, to say something to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that because I know when I originally started thinking about the masters, as I mentioned before, I had done the foundation and the advanced, and I was wondering, oh God, is this going to be a massive jump? Am I going to be of the right level, the right background? But I was someone who was, as Liz was saying, was working at a strategic level in some ways, but really wanted to progress. And actually, I think, yeah, doing the masters has just helped me in leaps and bounds, so much so that I've actually, while doing the masters, towards the end of it, was actually promoted into a much more strategic role in my organization. So it's kind of a very clear indication that, yeah, even though I wasn't quite at that level when I started the masters, I did really progress as I was doing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've hired
It's not
someone,
unusual.
so before I did the masters, I hired someone who had completed it, and the strategic strength when she interviewed was fantastic, and has continued to demonstrate 2 years into her life at Nationwide. So
so we, in theory, you're supposed already to be working at a strategic level, but in practice, we always take people who quite clearly got the potential,
It's the aptitude,
and can show by the way they answer the questions of the interview that they have that aptitude, even if their current role isn't demanding that of them at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And Juliet, I'm hoping that you're back. Hooray!
Sorry, the connection's a bit iffy today, isn't it?
It is a bit.
No, don't worry. I thought it was going to be me, so I've obviously passed that on to you instead. Okay, so I think
another question, unless, do we want to go back to ask Juliet the other? Oh, I think we've moved on from there. Do you think?
We've moved on now, yeah.
Okay, so another question. I'll come back to the learning or blended for the next year. Next is a straightforward one here, which is about the additional expenditure on purchasing reading materials. Is there a lot? Is it, you know, how much did you find yourself having to spend? What are the options there?
Shall I sort of kick off there by saying, well, this is what's available through the programme, and then the rest of you can say, and this is what we did, you know, so was that enough? Did we do anything in addition to that?
Yeah.
So when you join the programme, you are you're enrolled into Sol, which is Solent's online learning platform, and that has the most amazing academic library. So it's almost like an Aladdin's cave of books, really, and articles and stuff, where you can go in and just explore to online to your heart's content. You know, I was going to say that. So you'll go in. What we do on the course pages for each of the different units is the librarians are fantastic, and the sort of the core reading, then they will create a page for each unit where they've got links to all of the different sort of key sources that we're talking about in the workshops. But then over and above that, you can go in and explore, and we have an early session in induction day where a librarian comes and explains how you can actually do your own independent research and gives you hints and tips around how you search by keywords and can narrow searches and so on. So you can look across the plethora of books and journal articles, etc., that are in that online environment. And on top of that, you can also join a scheme called Sconal, which means that you can then join another university library of your choice, one that's local to you, and you can, I believe it's physical borrowing that you do there, but you can explain better, those of you who've actually used that, but that means you can actually go into another local university library and use all of their facilities as well. But what have you used over and above that, or did you find that that in the main sort of was sufficient?
Yeah, I thought the online stuff was fantastic. So the Soul platform, where, you know, virtually got me everything I needed. I joined the University of Gloucestershire as well, so I used their library in Cheltenham, which is where I live. I did buy a few books because if I was impatient or whatever, and I just wanted it next day from Amazon, then I did. I already had Bill Quirk's book, which is the Bible, and I think if I was going to say to anyone, if you bought one book for the whole thing, then get Bill's. And I was quite lucky because the member of my team who did the Masters before still had all of her books. So I got a nice delivery in the office one day, but
Nice.
You didn't need it. I mean, Bill's I liked because I could go through, I could highlight, I could draw on it, I could do whatever because it was mine. But I printed, you know, I used Work to print, probably not allowed, but anyway, because I do like a paper copy to be able to highlight and copy. So, but I don't think it requires an enormous amount. I think if it's useful at the beginning to highlight one or two books that you get the most value out of for the whole year, I think that's worth doing. But everything is online if you need it.
Yeah. And how about that? I mean, Juliet, was that your experience as well?
Yes, I think I'm officially back now rather than just pretending to be back.
Fantastic.
Again, I did buy a few books. Definitely have a look through the book lists when they first come out to establish which ones you think might be quite good. Speak to your tutors as well, because they'll have some good advice for you. I also found just Googling some of the key terms that were coming up were bringing up additional resources. They might not be key resources, and obviously you need to be careful to verify your sources as well to make sure that you know, it's not just Wikipedia or something, for example. Often, you know, I would just find a small quote online that would back up other quotes that I had. I don't know if anyone's mentioned this so far, but the difference I found really between doing a sort of a bachelor's degree and the master's was the need for critical analysis.
Yeah.
Had I really properly got my head around the need to be, you know, thorough and concise in critical analysis at the start, I probably would have got 100%. But that's a learning for me. But sometimes it's just having a Google to find a quote that can make your analysis critical in some way, or help you to guide towards critical analysis, either another way of thinking or supporting the evidence that you've already got as well. Yeah, definitely have a Google. I enjoyed just using a wide range of sources. So on my references, I always try to make sure that I had a good mix of books, journal articles, and sort of other sources as well. And I think that makes for sort of good grades in that area as well. It's not just having a lot on there, it's a good mix and making sure that they all either back each other up or go at least the other way, so that you can form good arguments.
Fantastic, thank you. And what about you, Rebecca? Anything to add?
Yeah, I think I probably agree with everything said there. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I reckon if I had to put a number on it, I probably only spent, because I was mainly doing things online, and I did buy a few books if I couldn't quite find them, or if there were really key texts like Kate was saying. So I probably spent, I reckon, between probably about £40 the whole year, because I was buying everything second hand as well, because there's so many great second hand sites that you can use. You don't have to buy, you know, some textbooks obviously are like £40 for the book, but you don't have to. I mean, a couple of the ones I use for my knowledge management research for my management report, they were meant to be 50-60 quid, but I got them for about £3 each second hand. So I think that's the other thing. If you are keen on having paper copies of things, you can get them, just get them second hand.
Amazon Marketplace.
Yes. Yeah.
The tip I have on that is sometimes if you don't what's the word, in some cases I bought the edition before, so it's still very valid, but it might only be a couple of pounds, whereas to buy the absolute up-to-date brand new edition, if it's for course, I was going to say there, that worked really well. So again, I managed to sort of up the number of authors that I could quote just by spending a pound or two on two books. A great one for about 1975. I don't think it's recommended to necessarily go back that far, but I think it was a bit of a Bible back in the day, and I would recommend that as well.
And ask our advice, because some of them it's worth buying a later edition. A lot of them it's doesn't really matter which edition you buy.
Yeah, particularly if you're talking about things like psychology and so on. Actually, you know, our psychology has not changed significantly in the last 20, 30 years.
So another question about how it's going to be this coming academic year. Will the learning be all online or blended?
Now, the plan is that, just to give a bit of context, the way it's worked to date is that for each unit, we always start off with a 2-day face-to-face workshop, and then everything beyond that is remote. And so you'll be doing your research remotely. We also run discussion boards at certain points. So, a couple of those are actually assessed. So what you're doing there is you're sharing theory with one another and discussing it and talking about the implications of it. And you're doing that online, and it's asynchronous. So you can go in at a time that suits you to be able to do all of that. And as a course team, we support people remotely as well. So people will send through questions or drafts, etc., on email. And the main criticism that we've had from that, I think, is that we tend to respond much too fast. We're kind of on top of the, oh, good, I've sent this off. I don't need to worry about it for a day or so. And, then bang, it comes back the same, within less than 24 hours later. So you're back on it again. But no, so the majority of it has always been online and remote, and we are very experienced at doing that. This next cohort, obviously we don't know exactly what's going to be happening with coronavirus, so we're taking quite a flexible approach. So the plan is, once we can get back to doing face-to-face workshops, we will, but if personal circumstances mean that it's better for people to join those workshops remotely, then they can do that. You can do that. And so it's going to be for you to decide the way in which you want to be, sort of accessing the workshops. Clearly, we don't know exactly what the situation is going to be like in the autumn, and whether or not the first workshop will be able to be face-to-face or fully remote. But, once we get to the point where we can give people the option of coming face-to-face, then we will do that as we have in the past, because we know people value that. But then I think, sort of people also value, the opportunity of keeping in touch with each other online as well, with discussion boards and everything. And I've just seen Daniel's query, which builds on this. How do you build relationship and sharing between students when so much is remote? And all of you know this already because you've done it. So over to you. How do we build sharing and relationships?
WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably over, because obviously we, like Liz was saying, you probably spend, I guess it's about 8-9 days you actually see people face to face. But then the rest of the time it's just creating kind of online communities when you're split into your groups. So I think everybody, I'm sure Kate and Juliet, you all have been the same, but we weren't in the same group, sorry, but everybody set up WhatsApp groups and was sharing ideas and supporting each other. So I know some groups had regular calls. It kind of just, it goes down to you really, the best way you all want to work together and the way you want to network.
Yeah.
Just to explain that, we put you into groups of about between sort of 5 and 6 students. Typically we try and do it by sort of sector, but it doesn't always work like that. There's usually an odds and sods group as well. But so the idea is that you will have people doing similar sorts of roles to you in the same group, which is what they've been talking about in the WhatsApp groups and so forth.
Yeah.
And our little cohort is still talking a year later, so we've kept in touch, and we've just helped one of them name their company she's setting up, which is brilliant.
Wow.
We lived through the assignments together. So when Shona was in an empty office in Canary Wharf with only the security guard for the company because she chose to do hers in the office, I think for 12 hours one day she was in there. We lived it with her. And actually, you could help each other answer the silly questions, and oh God, I'm doing this with my conclusion. Am I doing the right thing? Through to sharing pictures of your Christmas trees. Through to here's why I'm on holiday. It was actually really lovely, and we just keep checking in.
Yeah,
it's been really great.
And one of the nice things we know, because we keep in touch, so with lots of people from the alumni over the years, and we know that, stretching right the way back in time, even before this was a master's, and when it was a postgrad diploma, back in the day in the early noughties, there are still people from that time are still in touch with each other. So I think one of the things I've really noticed over the years is the way in which it does seem to the process does seem to build a really solid set of connections, really.
Talking about connections, very quick question. Is the Bill Quirk book, Kate, referred to making connections?
Making the connections, yes it is.
Yeah.
Another query, moving on to a different topic altogether. Does the panel have any tips for obtaining company sponsorship for funding the masters?
Be bold and ask for it.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on your organisation. Nationwide has got a central fund that you can apply to, and it fell at the right time of the year. So it was the start of the financial year when I asked. And my manager was supportive. Having a supportive organisation is really important, because when you're doing your management report, you want people to be engaged in it and wanting to help you and all of that sort of stuff. But I kind of just went to my boss and said, I really want to do this. Would you support it? I'll do the process. I'll do whatever that needs to happen. And I'm assuming other large organisations will have something similar, but for the smaller agencies or whatever, it's a bit harder.
It was the same for me as well. I put a case forward why I thought it was going to be good. Career development is very much part of the EOS, and we all have personal development plans as well, so that worked well. I'm also in a golden handcuffs deal, so I have to stay. I think I've only got another 3 months I have to stay now before I'm out of that as well. But really, I think the business is seeing the benefit of what I've learned as well, because we don't pay another person to sort of do the work, so it's from that perspective, it's boosting the skills and the knowledge that I have. Also, I think they can sort of do offsetting with VAT and stuff as well, and I've pitched it like that, and that's worked quite well. So and obviously as a business, in that way it costs the business less than it would you as an individual. I also know of other people who have been able to sort of work it so that work are paid for it and been able to deal with the VAT side. I'm assuming it's all above board, and sort of people can pay back in instalments over a couple of years as well to make it more affordable if needed. So that might be an option if you can't get them to secure full funding. Also asking them if they would go 50-50 with you might be another option as well. But for me, it was putting a case forward as to why I should be doing this, how it's going to benefit me, how it's going to keep me connected and motivated, and the value that it would ultimately bring to the business.
And I think when you're putting that business case forward, something to really bear in mind is the fact that, as I was saying, all of the topics that we look at, we do look very much at theory into practice all the time. And so there is an organisational payback really from the get-go. I would say. There will be things that you're going to be changing and tweaking, etc. And, you know, sort of when you look at the types of assignments that you're doing, for example, there is very positive organizational benefit to each of those. And so I think, you know, you can put a really good and solid case together about the tangible difference that it's going to make because of the different thing, you know, the different tasks that are going to be set for you and that you're going to have to do. And, you know, I'm always more than happy to talk people through that in more detail around, well, sort of how they might actually construct an argument that shows the type of benefit, payback that the organisation could get from it.
Okay, here's another very straightforward question. Are the workshop days on weekdays, or do you include weekends?
No, we have asked people over the years, because what we do is we constantly try and listen to our each cohort of students about what's working, what's not working, etc. Put a lot of emphasis on that. And whenever we've asked the question around weekdays, weekends, the balance has been people prefer weekdays. And so that's the reason that we've gone for weekdays. But you know, you were looking at 8 days in total over the year, well, plus the induction day as well. So, you know, it's not a significant amount of time.
So there's two related questions here. So one is, how do you do it between jobs? So in terms of what Becky was talking about earlier about how do you choose your examples and so forth, especially for the management report. But for all of them, it needs to be practically based. And then there's a similar question, which is, what's the level of support students who are not currently in an IC or engagement role will receive for the various bits of coursework? So it's a similar sort of question.
I mean, I've talked a lot. Do Jenny or Donma, do you want to respond to that one? Otherwise, I don't want it to be the Liz show.
Well, so every year we have quite a few people who are either between jobs, very often between jobs, who need some help with this. So there are various options. Or you get people who are in consulting jobs where the organisation they work in, their actual organisation isn't really relevant because it's very often very small. Or you get people who are freelance internal comms consultants, and in which case they might use a client organisation. Sometimes people will use the organisation they've just left if they're between jobs. Sometimes we've had students who have done for their 4th assignment something that they've actually done their research among the other students, which is quite interesting. Yeah. So we had one student one year who did a wonderful, very, very interesting piece of work about what internal communication professionals could do to improve the quality of line management communication. And she did her research for that by talking to a number of her fellow students about what they'd found had worked and what had helped and all the rest of it. So there are ways around it if you're not in an organisation currently. And sometimes people have helped each other. I think we once had someone who did some research in someone else's organisation.
We've done that a few times. Yeah, it can be quite a good way, actually. I know sometimes if you end up between jobs, actually saying, oh, I would be interested, particularly for the management report, in doing a piece of research in an organisation that you're targeting. If you have a way in there, that can be quite a nice sort of foot in the door. And we've certainly had students where one student has facilitated another student going in and doing the research in the first student's company. So there's all sorts of flexibility around that.
If I remember well, Becky, you did precisely that, right? So you did your final report and most of your assignments in relation to client organizations, not your own organization. And from what I remember, you did a pretty good job too.
Thank you. Yeah, so because I work for an agency, yes, I had to do exactly that. So I had to pick different organizations to do my research on. I think it's a different challenge because, yeah, as you were saying, you don't have your own company to analyze, but actually sometimes you probably end up thinking, oh God, I need to choose between different options. But it does also mean that you can apply your learning across different industries and different companies and kind of get a broader understanding that way. But yeah, it's definitely doable. I think you probably at the beginning, even if you have a momentary freeze of, oh gosh, have I got an example for this? You always come through and you always have one. So yeah, it's been fine. And then as I was saying, I know other people who've had to, who've been between jobs, but there was someone on our course who had just left his last company and just did his research on the company he just left.
I think also,
now
sorry, you go.
No, sorry. I was about to ask something completely different, so finish this one.
I was just going to say that I think if you are in between jobs, this is probably a fantastic use of your time, actually, because you can fully focus on it when you haven't, got to work around work, commuting, if and when we get back to that as well. So I would say if you are in between, then go for it.
We normally have one or two on maternity leave as well every year, or who do maternity leave at some stage in the course. So moving on, face-to-face days, are they in London or Southampton? Well, that's an easy one. The first day, the induction day, is in Southampton, so you all see it and see the facilities and all the rest of it. And that's it. All the rest are in London in terms of the face-to-face days.
Yeah. And that may change this year because, of course, we don't know at the moment when Solent will be open. So it may be that everything will be in London, but
maybe
it'll become clearer.
Online, we'll have to wait and see. And then another question, which is a very timely one, because we've been meaning to do it. Can you talk some more about the management report requirements?
Yeah.
So,
right. And I suggest what we do here is, Donna, if you just tell us a little bit about the requirements, and then what would be really interesting is for each of our panel to tell us a little bit about the actual research reports that they did, and why and what they learned from it, etc. And then once we've done that, we can go back to any other more general questions. So keep the questions coming, but we'll hold on to them and look at the management reports for a bit. Donna.
So the management report is an 8,000 piece of writing that you have to submit at the end of doing a piece of original research. Now, most people will do this piece of original research in their own organization, but as we've just said, you don't have to do that. You just have to find an organizational context in which you can work. You are free to decide what subject, what topic you want to research. Our recommendation is that what you choose is very specific as possible. It's about a real issue that your organization is facing right now. There is a real business problem to which you think there is a communication solution. So because the idea of doing the research and writing the report is that at the end of it, you can show by proposing specific recommendations that there is the communication can contribute to the resolving or to the improvement of the initial business problem you identified. So that's ideally what the management report is about and how it should work. Of course, there are a number of challenges that people sort of meet in the way, and sometimes it's not quite all of those things, but that's how it should be. You have quite a bit of time to do this, and we support you through the whole process. So you start by working with us. You are given a supervisor, so it will be one of us, and you start by working with your supervisor to put together a proposal for what you want to research and how you are proposing to do it. Now, the three people that we have amongst us at the moment might be delighted to know that this year, unlike what you had to do, this proposal will not be marked. So you actually had to go through the pain of producing a proposal for your research that also was marked. We no longer, so yeah, we no longer have that requirement. Yes, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So you know, this is a lesson we learned, or we all learned from your experience. So hopefully, I mean, I would be interested to know what you think. So the only thing that is marked now is your final management report. So your proposal will help you think through exactly what you want to research and how you're going to do it. And it will help us, your supervisors, give you feedback on whether you are thinking about this in the right way, that you're going about this in the right way, and help you kind of address some of the issues that you might be facing. Then once we give you feedback on your proposal, you start working on your actual live research. So, and most people choose to do some kind of qualitative research in their organizations, you know, interviews, focus groups, something like that. So you do your research, you collect your data, you do your analysis, then you sit down and write your report. And you finish your report, as I said, with recommendations. So the idea is that, for example, you do a bit of research on the culture of your organization, or how you can improve the way your line managers use communication to engage with remote teams. I don't know, something like that. And then hopefully you, by the end of this, you can say that you can put together specific recommendations that can improve the way line managers communicate in your organization. So part of this is for you to show that you can add value to the business by taking action on those recommendations. I probably said far too much here, and I'm sure that Becky, Kate, and Juliet will have much better things to say about the actual experience of doing this. So unless Jenny, Liz, you think I should be saying more, I'll just pass the baton.
That was a brilliant summary, thank you. And Kate, so tell us about what you did and why.
So I looked at the role of leadership during change, and I looked specifically at the role of a small leadership population that we've got at Nationwide called the Leadership 200, which is a non-hierarchical group, and their role in communicating changes to reward. So we are, it's a completely live project. We are looking at changes that will impact pay grades, job structure, etc., etc. So quite a big emotive change, and replacing a framework that's been in place, I think, since 1997. So we move quickly at Nationwide. So actually, you know, but because it's reward, because it's pay, because it's all that sort of stuff, it is a really emotional subject. And so I wanted to explore the role of leadership in communicating that effectively. And I interviewed a number of the Leadership 200, those who represent different business areas, so frontline versus operational versus strategic versus whatever it might be. And actually, what it has resulted in is it is directly influencing the engagement plan that we are building. So the programme itself has been delayed because of various things going on at Nationwide. But the outcomes of the project, which you know, you go through the management report and you do your research, and then you draw your conclusions, and then you make your recommendations. I'm not gonna lie, those recommendations are literally mapping across, and it's how we're doing things, which is, you know, that's what more do you want from a research project when it turns into something that you're actually delivering. So a couple of examples was that the strongest sentiment that came out of the research was around their own knowledge and their own, they can only lead if they understand. And that was really powerful. So I think Nationwide's typical way of doing things is we tell them about it the day before and expect them to know it intimately and be able to engage people in it when we drop a big bomb the next day. So actually what we have done already, even though the project is delayed, we've established this early. We formed a leadership advisory board, we've called it, we like a name. And we are using that group to co-develop materials with us. So they understand the ins and outs of what's changing, they can advocate for it, all of that sort of stuff. All the things that the research highlighted was important, we are putting in place. And actually it has influenced the timeline. So while the project has been delayed because of other operational things, the bit that we are setting aside to engage those leaders is not changing. So we are putting as much time and effort as we can to engage them, and that's a direct output of the research, which is brilliant. It did also give us a lot of credibility in going out and engaging people, because Nationwide is quite secretive, and so to be able to go and do these interviews and talk to people about something that was coming up, I mean, that was just fantastic, because they appreciated the heads up, they really wanted to share their insight. It was a way of getting them to engage in the research, because it was almost like you're sharing some secrets with them, which enabled them to be as open and as honest as possible. And then the only other thing that we're going to build is, because of the emotion of the subject and the fact that the research highlighted that leaders want to understand what's changing, but they want to be equipped to handle those emotional responses, is we haven't delivered this yet, but we will do some workshops and stuff on emotional resilience and emotional intelligence, so that they can anticipate and understand and appreciate and respond to the emotional reactions they might see from people. So it's all, I mean, it was perfect. We had a great time to do the project. The management report just was, I mean, excellent timing in order to be able to do the research for something that we are actually delivering at Nationwide.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. So that was Kate. And Rebecca, because yours was, Becky, yours was something, you were looking at a very different area, weren't you? You were looking at knowledge management and knowledge sharing.
Yeah. So something that I think when we did a little bit of it in one of the modules, a little bit about knowledge management, and I know there were murmurs around the room of, oh, does this fit in with internal communication? But absolutely, it definitely does. So yeah, I did mine on a financial institution who was looking at, they had two departments that they really wanted to share knowledge, but they were as different as could be. So that, you know, they had different purposes, they were producing different products, different kind of skills in their employees, and the organization was kind of saying, right, we want to put in this knowledge management process, how can we encourage people to do it? But actually, long story short, my research actually uncovered that they were not in a place yet to be able to even put a platform in and then encourage people to use it. They actually had to take a step back and try and make connections between these two people, because they had no idea of the type of knowledge the other department had, for starters. So when I was doing the interviews, there was one department was referring to knowledge and ideas as data, and then the other department was talking about ideas and innovation, so coming from completely different places. So the recommendations really went into how could internal communication inform both departments of the types of knowledge they had and the value in it, and then start to make connections and community between those two departments. So it was a really interesting piece of research in that kind of the organization I was doing it for kind of had ideas about what they wanted from it, but actually I came back and said, actually you need to take a step back and look at it from a different angle. And it was really really interesting, and particularly interesting to do something like knowledge management, because that isn't something that I had a lot of experience of or knowledge in. So even just doing the reading and the literature review at the beginning was really interesting to learn about such a new area for me.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Juliet, I know that you were looking at a warehouse environment and shop floor workers, and sort of the internal communication implications there. So tell us briefly about your project.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying that I found the research or the management report a really invaluable experience. It's not something to sort of be concerned about at all. I would say immerse yourself in it and enjoy it, because I got so much out of it. So as Liz says, I was basically looking at perceived lack of two-way communication within a particular team. We run an annual employee opinion survey at DPDHL, and unfortunately we don't have any input into the questions. There's basically 41 questions that are ranked on a Likert scale, and there's very, very little opportunity for respondents to provide any qualitative research at all. I think it's literally like 200 characters or something, which you can't do a lot with. So I was able to hone in on this particular team where it was perceived that two-way communication was lacking in some way, and so I conducted some one-to-one interviews with about 8 members of a team of 24, and it was so insightful. I came away with absolute respect for these guys. Basically, as a result of a new focus on the EOS, we've been asking managers to focus on making sure that they have at least weekly team meetings, by twice a week PDs, performance dialogue. So basically the team get together in front of a whiteboard and talk through sort of a range of hot topics, sort of, you know, in a short meeting, and also conducting one-to-ones with their people at least a couple of times a year, preferably a lot more. Management was saying that this was happening, but having spoken to the guys, it was clear that it wasn't. What was clear, that one-to-one operational communication was happening. So, you know, here, please do this, and there was an opportunity for the guys to feed back there. But it was really clear that there was a lack of team and group communication, where all the team members would come together with the manager to you know, discuss operational matters, but also just team and sort of team building, motivational, you know, coming together as one team, which is one of our strap lines. And I also came away with a very robust plan for sort of turning this around. And actually what's happened is it's really evolved into actually a whole new project that HR, also the graduate programme, are getting involved in terms of improving communication with and between our blue collar workers. So it's not going to happen in the timescales that I proposed, but I'm really happy because actually it's going to be a longer term project, which is hopefully going to embed good, solid, respectful two-way communication between managers and the teams as a whole, which is amazing.
Amazing.
That's amazing. Brilliant.
Excellent.
Excellent. Where we're running out of time,
yes.
There's one very simple one to answer. We're being encouraged to work from home as far as possible, travel only if absolutely necessary. So will the workshops take place via Zoom or Teams for those who can only attend remotely? Yes.
Yes, it's completely,
So
it will be up to you how you join the workshops, whether you join face-to-face once we're able to do them, or if you want to join via Zoom. Zoom is our platform of choice, then you will certainly be able to do that.
So another question, how does the interview process work to be accepted for the Masters?
It is basically, there are some pieces of work that you need to send through to demonstrate your, you know, sort of work that you've done previously. That's because when you join the Masters, you are credited with having done the first third of a Masters to begin with. So you actually only work towards 2/3 of it. So you'll send through things like a plan and, you know, and some little bits of research you've done and some examples of communication material. Not very much. We don't need much. It's quality, not quantity we're after. And then you have an interview with me where I ask you a series of questions where we're just exploring your kind of, your attitude, internal communication. But I don't think it's that painful an experience, is it? Those of you that have been through it already. Yeah, no. I'm quite friendly, really. Yeah. And that's it.
Okay. So what date are classes likely to commence for the coming year?
We were originally planning to start in September. We're currently, together with the university, we are reviewing that currently. And it's possible that we will push that start date back to slightly later, sort of, I would possibly November. We will have concluded that very shortly, I hope, and we'll be able to confirm it. But you'll appreciate that everything's in flux at the moment. So we just want to make sure we go for a start date that is going to give the best possible experience to everybody.
So a question from Donna: if you're between jobs without access to prior work or email, how can you evidence work to date?
I'd say, well, I'm talking too much again. Donna or Jenny on that one?
Well, no, because you do the interviewing.
You do the interviews.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were talking about assignments.
No.
If you're in that situation, talk to me. I think in advance. I mean, I often have a chat with people before they get into the interviews themselves anyway. We can chat it through, and I have never yet, as long as you've had the experience where you've done these things in the past, we've always been able to find, ways in which you can evidence the fact that you've got that experience. So just sort of get in touch via Sarah, and we can talk through what's going to be the most sensible way for you.
That appears to be at the moment all the questions, and so we might want to open up in case I've either missed any or people have got supplementaries. I'm very aware that it's been a bit of us talking out to them, so I don't know if you want to open it up for anyone who wants to ask any more questions.
Okay, well, tell you what, while people are thinking about whether or not they've got any more questions, why don't we quickly go round the panel again and say, right, so right now, given COVID and everything that you've been doing over the last few months, and I'm impressed that you're all still vertical. In what way has the Masters been helpful with the whole COVID situation? And those of you who want to add additional questions in, please just keep going. Juliet, in COVID, what would you say has been useful from the Masters perspective?
I think going back to what I said at the start, it's given me the confidence that how I, think, how I strategize, etc., fits in with the science behind it and the theory, and having the respect from the senior management team to sort of, go with what I think is right, and to get them on board, and communicating more than ever. It's been absolutely invaluable and perfect timing for me, and I couldn't recommend the course more. It's it's a pretty intense year, but looking back on it, I'm so glad that I've done it.
Fantastic, thank you. And Becky, how about for you? Any particular COVID insights?
Yeah, I think it was Kate was talking about at the beginning about change and how it's made it's brought it really to life, in terms of kind of the science behind it and how people react to change, and that naturally has been really useful. There's so many different change management models and theories that you look at during the course, but it's kind of allowed me to take out my own kind of guiding principles, the similarities you see across them all. As an example, I've done a couple of webinars for kind of training sessions for change teams in larger organizations about exactly that, how people react to change, how there's different timelines to change, how you need strong leadership, authentic leadership, to have a clear vision, all of those things that have just been, I mean, it literally is like lifted from the master's curriculum into real life, because that's been really invaluable. And I think also just the way, thinking differently about audiences. So the learning we did around behaviors and neuroscience and sense making, and really thinking about how audiences react and how everybody reacts differently to things. Often I think in internal comms, we get into the trap of segmenting people into kind of those channel buckets of, these people are based in the office, so they're like this, these people are based in a factory or on the road, so they're like this. But actually it makes you think about the emotional side of things, and that's been so important during this, because you've got people who are on furlough, people who are still working on sites, people who are working from home, people who are trying to school their kids, and trying to make sure your messaging is right with all of that knowledge in your head has been really useful.
Fantastic. And Kate, how about for you?
So I think the biggest learnings are around leadership. And I think leadership during a crisis, well, we covered leadership more broadly on the Masters, but what we did learn was that leadership is a continuous thing that you're constantly developing. And so actually when it comes to a crisis, you can't suddenly change who you are. You have had to have built up all that credibility and that reputation beforehand. So we've obviously been working with our leadership before then, but where we've had to adapt to their normal channels being unavailable. So if you've got leaders who like to wander around the office and have a chat and make sure people are okay, you can't do that. And it's actually taking them out of their comfort zone and helping them still keep connected to their people who are all working from home. And actually linking back to Bill's stuff around engaging leadership is linked to a purpose. And being an organisation that is classed as a key worker organisation because people need access to their money, has given, and Nation has always had a compelling purpose, but it's brought our purpose even more to life. And that has felt very authentic and very real the whole way through, inspired by Joe, who I talked about all the way through the Masters because he's a wonderful chief exec. And actually, yeah, taking all that learning in terms of leadership styles and what works for them, how they make decisions, all of that sort of stuff to the max when half the stuff they normally do doesn't exist anymore.
Got two more quick questions. We're nearly out of time. So one is, what's the deadline for applications?
Well, I think currently it's August. As we've said, there may be some flex in terms of when the start date is. So I think, you know, sort of
we may well take late applications.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then would there be support provided to students who want to do the course from overseas, especially if they're in between jobs?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And obviously the fact that you can now do it if you want to or need to, you don't need to come to the workshops, obviously makes that easier.
Yeah.
And there is we do every year have a few students for whom English is not their first language, and they normally do really well. I mean, obviously they must be highly intelligent and highly motivated to have got to doing a master's, and we've never had a problem with the quality of English from people to where English isn't their first language, and we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic. Are we almost there? I think we should.
We are there, actually.
Yeah. So Jen Sproul, would you like to come back and say hello and any final words? I'm sorry, what we were planning originally was to chat amongst ourselves and then open up to questions and have everybody come up. And as it is, you all had such fantastic questions that we've spent most of the time doing that while you've all been behind your screens. But hopefully everyone's got what they wanted, and that's the only thing that matters, really. Jen, over to you for some finishing words.
No, I just think, thank you again to Becky, to Kate, to Juliet, to Jenny, to Domna, to Liz. They are a fantastic teaching team, a fantastic group of alumni who have taken their time tonight to really express the value and the detail, which I hope has been, however much it's through a screen, I hope it's given you a little bit of an infectious passion for it. That's, I guess, trying to reach through that screen and make that happen. And just to say, we really appreciate all those comments and questions. It is a bit of an odd year, as Liz has talked through. At the moment we are trying, we will make sure everything is done virtually. So the fact that we cannot have face-to-face will not stop us from proceeding with the Masters. We are working with Sarah to do that. We will obviously, when we can, make that happen because we see the importance of face-to-face. But we hope, actually, as I think, through everything comes opportunity. An opportunity to make things more accessible. And I say, actually, what COVID has done is made the future about trust and choice. And hopefully that's more of what you can see is going to happen. For questions, nuances from applications and to whatever, Liz is always willing to give her time to talk, to have one-to-one chats. So any questions, always feel free. But I hope that you really feel that if you can find the time, the commitment, we appreciate it. It's a lot. But I hope that what you've taken from this evening is just the wonderful warmth and joy and passion and value, intrinsic value it will give you from not only your abilities and your knowledge, but from your fundamental confidence as well, which we know is a big barrier to getting us to be those real strategic influencers. So please, you know, follow up with any questions. We're here to help. We're a very supportive bunch, and we will confirm very, very soon on the official start date. But no, we're working to make this as accessible as possible.
Absolutely.
So shall we? So on that, it's 3 minutes past. So I'm sure people are hungry. I think I've got an evening of pasta and cheese because, you know. But go enjoy your evenings, and like I say, any questions, do get in touch with Sarah or any of us at the IoIC, and we're really here to help.
Absolutely, yeah. And thanks so much, everybody for taking part. There's nothing I love more than talking about the Masters.
Comes across, Liz.
Yeah. Excellent.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Lovely to see you. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, just us.
Hello.
Hiya. Oh, no,
Who's
and two
Richard's
as
iPad?
well. Two